Welcome to the Daily Review. This is Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading. And today is May 1st, 2024, and today is Wednesday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, the U.S. markets sell off, bringing the rest of the markets down with them. But first, look at today's major economic events. So at 4 p.m. South African time, out of the United States, we have an ISM manufacturing PMI number coming out. Now then, at 8 p.m. out of the United States, the Federal Reserve, the FOMC, will have a rate statement. That's a big interest rate decision, third of the year. Now looking at corporate earnings, we have Mastercard, Pfizer, and Qualcomm publishing their quarterly earning reports. Now looking at the markets, they all sold off. Starting out with the Forex symbols, the major pairs did sell off, the dollar getting stronger. And that inverse relationship continues with the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ both selling off. And as we look at commodities, gold and oil sold off. And looking at the tech stocks, they were the biggest losers. And lastly, looking at cryptocurrencies, also sold off. So all the markets sold off. Let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So here we go. First with the Euro USD, selling it off to 106.57. Not bigger of a sell-off, okay, because it did sell off the previous day, so it just trickled down a little bit further. However, if we jump into the Australian dollar, that was a more aggressive sell-off, okay? That was the one that had a harder time. If we look at the GBP USD, I would have expected it to sell off. It's interesting because on a daily, we see that there was a crossover with the 200-day moving average and the 30-day moving average. The blue line is the 30-day. You see it crossing over, and that is a very bearish sentiment. So keep that in mind. And I would expect us to be lower for longer. I mean, if we look at the last time we crossed over with the 30-day over the 200-day moving average, that kept up a long time before it actually sold off. So interestingly enough, we're changing character here. The British pound is getting weaker versus the US dollar. And jumping into the Japanese yen, it's back to its lows. Okay, not record lows, but 157. Yes, it hit 160 and then retraced, but we're crawling back there as intimately. Okay, so that's something to consider also. Now looking at gold, gold did sell off to 22.38. Now that is a decent sell-off because we were at 2,300. Okay, and you can see that we just continuously sold off. Now we are in a minor supporters level here, so keep that in mind. If we do bounce, we'd be bouncing off at this level. Crude oil did sell off as well to $81 a barrel. So sell-off was across the board. Now jumping into the Dow Jones, okay, if we look at a 4-hour chart, that was a 500 point move on the downside, okay, so it's an aggressive sell-off for the Dow Jones, and the NASDAQ also caught up, okay, and it was the one that looked a little bit stronger, but sure enough, it did, falter us. Now looking at Apple, we had a big gap up, 2 gap ups, but then couldn't hold it. We hit resistance and we're closing the gap right now. The other one that pushed higher also was Amazon, getting that gap up but not sustaining it, not holding it. Google was another one that had a huge gap up, all-time record highs, but can't sustain it. Okay, there is some sentiment in the market that that these levels are not justified. Okay, so when you do see this, when you see a stock that beats its earnings, everything's great, but sells off, then the prospect of the next 6 months to a year is off as well. So keep that in mind. Now jumping into JP Morgan, we sold off from our closing the gap, and that's completely to be expected. You see here, there is a downwards sentiment when we look at the RSI as well. So keep that in mind as well. Now jumping into the other stocks, Microsoft also was a big loser. Look at that, at 389. This was a $428 stock and just being beaten up really badly. Now it's getting close to supporters level. 381 is a supporters level, so keep that in mind. Okay, so that's another one that I'd like to look. Now Tesla also did sell off, but not as aggressively. So coming back a little bit stronger, even though the market sold off. Now lastly, let's take a look at Bitcoin as that retraced below 60K to 59,000. Okay, we're still at supporters level. This is a major support. Okay, so if we do breach this with some momentum, we could see ourselves going back to the 46, 48,000 level. And keep that in mind because that's about 10K away from us. So the markets did sell off. I do expect a little bit of quietness before the FOMC rate statement, and especially to hear what he has to say moving forward, which is going to be really the most important part. This is Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.